The first sound was not a knock, not exactly. It was softer than that, like the fragile tapping of fingernails against glass, a whisper of a sound, yet sharp enough to cut through the silence of a midnight house. Imagine it. You are alone, the hum of daytime gone, the air heavy with stillness, and then tap, 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 as if someone or something is already inside, announcing itself with the gentlest insistence. Before we descend further, let me draw you closer. Make sure you subscribe to the Granny's Whisper channel, where the darkest stories come alive every night. And tell me in the comments, do you listen in complete darkness, or do you keep a little light burning just in case? Now, lean in and don't look away from the shadows gathering at the edge of your room. That night, Jordan sat perched on the edge of his bed, blue light from his phone carving a pale glow into the darkness. He wasn't supposed to be afraid. His parents had gone out for dinner, insisting he was old enough to keep the house safe for a few hours. 15, strong enough to stay alone, too old to be tucked in or kissed on the forehead. But the house disagreed. Without voices, without footsteps or television static, it breathed differently. The walls creaked like bones settling, and silence crawled through the halls like a thing alive. The first knock didn't alarm him. Maybe a branch shifting in the wind or the gate rattling in its hinge. But the second came with rhythm. 3 deliberate raps, as though someone wanted to be sure he heard. The vibration of it seemed to travel through the plaster into his chest. He pulled one earbud free, heart stuttering, and strained to listen. Nothing. Only the hum of his own breath and the faint whistle of the air vent. Curiosity dragged him to the window at the end of the hall. From there, he could peer down into the backyard. The wooden fence cut the lawn into a darker shadow. The corners eaten by blackness. He held his breath. No one there, no movement, no figure, just stillness. He told himself it was the wind, slipped back into bed, and scrolled further, but his mind snagged on the silence. Houses don't knock. Wind doesn't rap 3 times. The third knock was no knock at all. It was a bang, heavy, deliberate, shaking the frame of the back door until the glass rattled in protest. His phone nearly slipped from his hands. He stared at the ceiling as though it could offer answers. Then another bang, harder this time, closer to breaking. He could almost see splinters peeling off the doorframe. Panic rooted itself low in his stomach. He texted his father, fingers trembling, each word uneven. Someone knocking at back door. Do you know anything? No reply. Of course, no reply. His parents were out. The restaurant always had poor reception. He was truly alone. The banging rose in violence, now a steady rhythm, insistent and merciless. Thud, thud, thud. He crept from his room, each step down the hall measured and slow. The wooden stairs below groaned when his weight pressed on them, a sound too loud, too alive. He held his breath and leaned just enough to glimpse through the archway toward the kitchen. The sliding glass door glimmered faintly, the curtain only half drawn. Behind it, movement. A shape hunched tall, pressing against the glass as though testing its strength. A hand, pale in the low light, slid across the pane, palm squealing faintly as it traced back and forth, searching for weakness. He ducked behind the couch, chest tight, the air around him suddenly too thick to swallow. And then a voice, muffled through glass, low and gravelly, but clear enough. Hello? Hey, open up. I need to talk. Talk. At this hour, his lips barely parted as he whispered, "This isn't right." He dialed 911, the screen's glow harsh in the dark. "Emergency services, what's your location?" came the operator's calm voice. He recited his address in a hoarse whisper. "Someone's trying to get in the back door. I'm home alone." His own words chilled him, gave weight to the reality pressing at the glass. The operator's voice steadied him, instructing him to lock doors, hide if possible. Help was coming, but help was minutes away. Minutes stretched into eternity when you could hear your doorframe groan under fists. The sound changed. A crash, glass fracturing, raining sharp shards across the tile. The sound bit into the night like a scream. Heavy boots crushed the fragments as they stepped inside, each crunch deliberate. Then came the voice again, no longer muffled. "Hello?" Stronger now, resonant, as though the walls themselves repeated it. "I know someone's here. Come out. I just need to borrow something." Borrow. The word felt poisoned. Who breaks glass to borrow? Jordan retreated, pressed against the basement door, fingers slick on the knob. The figure moved into the kitchen light, tall and hulking, a hood shadowing his face, gloved hands flexing like claws. He prowled toward the living room, head swiveling, scanning. "Kit," the voice growled, "I saw the light upstairs. Don't make this hard." Jordan's stomach twisted. He had turned the light off, hadn't he? His memory faltered, rewinding desperately. He had, he was sure. But the man knew. Somehow he knew. He held the basement door shut from within, muscles trembling against the pressure when the intruder's palm pressed it from the other side. The wood bowed slightly, the knob twitching. "Open up," the man hissed, the growl bubbling into rage. "I ain't gonna hurt you. Just give me the keys to the car in the garage." Jordan's mind reeled. His father's sedan, old and dull, nothing special. Why that? Why him? The pounding on the door grew harder, rattling the hinges. His shoulder braced the frame, every tendon straining to keep it shut. In his ear, the operator whispered, "Police are close. 1 minute. Stay quiet." But silence was impossible with the man's breath just feet away, the scrape of his boots shuffling on wood. Then, sirens. Distant but undeniable, they wove into the night air like a song of salvation. The intruder stilled. "Damn it!" he spat, and his footsteps retreated, crunching over broken glass, fading into the night. The back door groaned open, then slammed. Silence swallowed everything again. Jordan held the knob so long his hand ached. He counted to 20, then 30, before he allowed himself to move. The front door burst open, a thunder of authority, voices barking, "Police, show yourself!" He stumbled out of the basement, knees weak, voice breaking as he called, "Down here, I'm okay!" They found him pale and trembling, phone still pressed to his ear. The man was gone, but not far. They caught him 2 blocks away, panting, spitting curses, the hood pulled low. Later, Jordan would learn the truth, that he had been watching the house for days, patient as a spider, that he once worked for his family, fixing small things, that he knew when the house was empty, when the parents left, when the boy was alone, that he whispered to himself at night outside their window, rehearsing what he would say when the glass finally gave way. Jordan's parents rushed home an hour later, fear carving lines into their faces. His mother's arms clung to him as though she could never let go again. His father checked each lock twice, though the locks had already failed. The next day, they bought a new alarm system, one that shrieked at the smallest touch, but the shriek of glass breaking still lived inside Jordan's head. The voice, too, that strange blend of calm and threat, the promise that it would be quick, it would be easy, if only he obeyed. Even years later, in quiet houses, in dark nights when the air pressed too heavy, Jordan would hear it. A knock too deliberate, a silence too sharp, and then that voice, "Come out," always just behind the door, always knowing more than it should. And as you listen now, in your own quiet room, the question lingers like breath on the back of your neck. Do you know for certain that every lock in your house is holding tonight? Sleep is supposed to erase the weight of the day, to fold your body into the dark and keep you safe until morning. But sometimes, sleep is nothing more than a trick, an illusion that makes you believe you are alone, while something waits just beyond the edge of waking. It was after 1 a.m. when David stirred in his narrow bed. His muscles ached from the warehouse shift, each joint heavy with exhaustion. He had collapsed into sleep without eating, without turning on a single light. The rental house, old and sullen, held its silence like a held breath. And then came the sound. At first it slid through his dream like background noise, soft, dull, almost easy to dismiss. A thump, low and deliberate, from downstairs. His eyes snapped open, heart already sprinting ahead of reason. The room was a cage of shadows, only the faint street lamp outside stretching pale fingers through the curtain. He told himself it was the house settling, the wind knocking a shutter loose. But then, unmistakably, came the footsteps, heavy, pacing, searching. The hairs at the back of his neck lifted, his chest tightened until each breath scraped. He reached for his phone, but the screen glared a cruel reminder. 8% battery, no signal bars, no lifeline to the outside world. The steps below shifted from steady to urgent, crossing the living room, pausing, then moving again, like someone rifling through drawers, searching for something hidden. A drawer slammed, metal rattled, the air in his throat burned, the stairs groaned. Someone was climbing. David's body moved before his thoughts could catch up. He crossed the room on silent, bare feet, heart pounding so loud he feared it would give him away. The door stood ajar, the hallway beyond darker still. He couldn't run, not without being heard. His eyes darted to the closet, the access panel to the attic. He swung the door open, careful not to let the hinges squeal, and climbed onto a box, shoving the panel up. Dust rained down, musty and stale. He pulled himself into the crawl space, forcing his body into the suffocating dark. The insulation clung to his skin, itchy and warm. He pulled the panel shut just as the steps reached the top of the stairs, and then he froze. The door to his room clicked open. The light flared to life. Through the thin cracks, David saw the yellow glow seeping upward. He saw shadows moving, stretching long across the walls. The intruder rifled through drawers, papers rustling, items clattering. His voice, deep and uneven, carried up through the wood. "Where are you?" It wasn't the words themselves, but the way they bent. Rough, impatient, as though the man wasn't hunting valuables at all. He was hunting him. The closet door banged open, clothes hangers clattered against one another. David's muscles screamed to move, but he held his breath until his vision blurred. A hand reached upward, brushing the ceiling, close enough to make the panel tremble. He bit his lip until the taste of iron filled his mouth. The intruder muttered to himself, words muffled, curses hissing like snakes. He stepped back, pacing across the room. Then the springs of the bed whined. He had sat down, waiting. David's legs cramped, sweat stinging his eyes. Minutes dragged into eternities. He pictured the man below, still staring at the ceiling, knowing, waiting for him to break. The silence stretched until it snapped. The man rose, walked to the window, yanked the curtain aside. The pane rattled. His voice came again, louder this time. "Fine, I'll check the rest." His footsteps retreated into the hall, down the stairs, fading into the belly of the house. David counted, slow, shaky, each number an anchor in the storm. 1 minute, 2. Still nothing. He slid the panel open, inch by inch. The room below lay ransacked, drawers overturned, shadows stretched and quivered. The front door slammed. Silence reclaimed the air. His phone buzzed. The low battery warning hummed like a scream in the silence. He killed the sound instantly, but his trembling fingers were already dialing. 911, what's your emergency? The words rushed out in a whisper. Someone broke in. He was searching for me. I hid in the attic. I think he's gone now. The operator's voice stayed calm, but David's world tilted. Her words barely anchored him as he pressed himself against the wall, listening for any whisper of sound. Minutes later, sirens wailed in the distance, bleeding into the night until blue and red lights painted the walls. The officers found the back door forced open, glass splinters glittering on the floor. No sign of the man, no explanation for the words he'd spoken. "Where are you? Come out. It'll be quick." The police called it a burglary, nothing more. But David knew better. Burglars search for valuables, not people. Burglars don't sit in your bed and wait. Burglars don't whisper promises that sound like sentences. After that night, he couldn't look at the attic panel without shivering. He reinforced the locks, installed alarms, but none of it mattered. Because deep down he knew, when you wake in the silence of 3 a.m. and you hear a floorboard groan or a drawer slide open in the dark below, you'll never be sure if it's the house or if someone is already waiting for you to come out. And as you lie there listening now, imagine the sound above you, a faint scuff, a shift of weight, something in the attic, not settling, not the wind, something waiting. The ocean at night was supposed to soothe her, the lull of the tide, the salt air drifting through her cracked window, the quiet lullaby of a small beach town asleep. For years, Lauren had depended on that rhythm, on the sound of waves against sand to carry her into sleep. But that night, the sea was not a lullaby. It was a backdrop, thin and fragile, behind something darker. Her shift at the bar had stretched late. A group of tourists, drunk and demanding, had kept her until almost dawn. By the time she trudged home, sneakers dragging, every muscle begged for rest. She slipped through the door of the shared rental, past the stairwell where her roommates slept, and into her ground floor bedroom. She didn't bother with the lamp. She changed into a loose shirt and shorts, slid beneath the blanket, and let her bones sink. She was already dreaming when the scratching began. At first, it was faint, irregular, like a branch brushing against the mesh of her window screen. She almost dismissed it, almost let exhaustion drown it out, but it persisted, an intentional scrape, metal grating against metal, a sound with purpose. She sat up slowly, her breath shallow. The glow from the street lamp outside cut across her room, thin as a knife. Against that glow, a shadow shifted. Someone was hunched low at the window, a tool glinting faintly in his hand. He wasn't brushing the screen, he was cutting it. Her skin prickled cold. The figure wore a dark hoodie, the hood pulled so low his face was swallowed whole. His shoulders strained as he pressed, slicing the mesh, peeling it back with steady hands. When he lifted the cut section, preparing to hoist himself through, Lauren's stomach turned to stone. Her phone rested on the nightstand, too far to grab without making noise. The hallway door loomed behind her, an escape, but she'd have to cross the floor, and the floor would creak. She had only seconds. Her body made the choice for her. As the man's gloved hands gripped the sill and he pulled himself upward, she lunged onto the bed, braced her back against the wall, and kicked with every shred of strength she had. Both heels collided with his chest. The grunt that burst from him was guttural, a sound of flesh against bone. He toppled backward, crashing into the bike rack below, the clang of metal ringing sharp through the night. For a heartbeat, she thought he was gone, but she knew better. She slammed the window shut, fingers twisting the lock until her knuckles burned. Her chest heaved. Then she snatched her phone, voice cracking as she whispered into the receiver, "911, please. Someone tried to climb in my window. He's still out there." The operator's calm voice grounded her as she pressed herself into the corner of the room, knees drawn tight. "Units are on their way. Stay on the line. Stay safe." But safety was already broken. She peeked through the blinds. The bike rack was bent, but the man was gone. Not limping down the street, not staggering across the lot. Just gone, swallowed by shadow. Her pulse hammered so hard she thought her ribs might snap. She gave the operator every detail she could: average height, slim, black hoodie, dark pants. She tried to convince herself that would be enough, that the police would handle it. But her body still shook. The minutes crawled until sirens split the silence. Red and blue bled across her walls, staining the room with warning. Officers entered, one staying close to her, the other circling the house. They found the shredded screen, the knife marks glistening in the lamplight. 20 minutes later, they came back with him, 2 blocks away, crouched in bushes. In his backpack, a box cutter, duct tape, zip ties, not tools of theft, tools of something far worse. Lauren's stomach heaved when they told her. "You did the right thing," one officer said, his voice calm but his eyes sharp. "But you should keep that window locked from now on. Nights like this attract all kinds." She nodded, though anger burned beneath her fear. Why should it be her fault for wanting fresh air? But that didn't matter anymore. The breeze was no longer innocent. Every breath of salt air through an open window would taste like danger. Her roommates fixed the screen the next day, replacing it with stronger mesh. They chipped in for locks, for alarms, for false promises of security. Lauren didn't argue, but when she lay in bed at night, her hand always hovered near her phone, her ears tuned to every scrape and shuffle, because she had seen the way he moved, silent and purposeful. She had felt the weight of his body against her heels, the certainty of his intent. He hadn't come to steal. He had come for her. And sometimes, when the tide rose high and the wind rattled the new mesh, she swore she could see the shadow again, hunched at the window, knife in hand, patient, as though he had never really left. And tonight, as you lie listening, think about your own window. Think about the thin screen, the flimsy lock, the space of only a few inches between you and the night. Do you know for sure what waits outside, pressed against the glass, waiting for you to close your eyes? The house was too quiet for a Monday morning, School was closed for some reason that already slipped from memory, and with his parents at work, Ethan had the run of the place. 12 years old, alone in the living room with the TV flickering. He liked it that way, no one telling him to turn it down, no one watching over his shoulder, just him, the couch, and the hollow silence of an empty house. The knock came at the front door. It wasn't casual. It wasn't the playful tap of a neighbor or the delivery guy's polite rap. It was firm, heavy, the kind of knock that says, "I know you're in there." Ethan froze. The remote slipped slightly in his sweaty palm. His mother had told him never to answer when strangers came, but this knock carried a weight that made the air feel different, thick and sour. He crept toward the curtain, careful not to move it too far. Through the sliver of glass, he saw them. 2 men, one tall with a beard and a dark jacket, the other shorter, leaner, a hoodie pulled low over his head. Neither looked familiar. Neither looked patient. They weren't delivery men. They weren't neighbors. Their eyes kept darting left, right, scanning the street. Ethan backed away. His heartbeat thumped in his ears. "Don't answer. Don't move." The knocking stopped. For a moment, silence returned, so heavy it pressed down on him like a blanket. He dared to breathe. Maybe they were leaving. Maybe. The rustle came from the backyard. His stomach dropped. He hurried to the kitchen, peeking out toward the back door. The 2 men were there now, shadows against the morning light. The tall one's boot hammered into the doorframe, each kick louder, more violent. The wood groaned. The glass rattled. Panic seized him. He snatched his phone from the counter, fingers trembling as he dialed. 911, what's your emergency? The operator's calm voice nearly broke him. 2 men, they're trying to get in. Please, please send help. Stay calm, she said, her voice low and steady. Where are you right now? In the closet, upstairs. Please, hurry, they're breaking in. She told him to stay quiet, to keep the line open. But the sound downstairs was deafening now. Splintering wood, drawers crashing open, voices muttering rough commands. Check the living room. Grab anything you can. Hurry. Their words were muffled, but clear enough to carve terror into him. He crouched deeper into the back of the closet, knees pressed against his chest, hidden behind his mother's winter coats. The door had no lock. His hand clutched the phone so tightly his knuckles burned. Every creak of the floorboards below was a hammer to his chest. Then came the stairs. Slow, deliberate steps, each one heavier than the last. Ethan pressed his forehead against his knees, praying. The bedroom door creaked open. He heard drawers yanked, clothes tossed, the mutter of frustration. Then the steps shifted. Closer. The closet. The handle turned. Light spilled in, slicing across the shadows. The shorter man's face appeared, eyes widening as he met Ethan's terrified stare. Ethan couldn't hold it in. His voice burst out, trembling, "Please don't hurt me." The man froze. Then he shouted over his shoulder, "There's a kid in here!" His voice cracked. Not guilt, not kindness, just alarm. Footsteps thundered. Both men bolted down the stairs. The slam of the front door shook the frame. Silence rushed in again, broken only by Ethan's ragged breathing and the operator's calm reassurance. Stay where you are. Officers are almost there. Moments later, sirens cut through the morning air, swelling louder, closer. Police voices echoed through the house. Anyone here? Ethan stumbled from the closet, legs wobbling, and called out. They found him pale, trembling, still clutching the phone. The house lay ransacked, drawers spilled open, but nothing taken. The intruders hadn't had time. The officers listened carefully as he described every detail, from the front door knock to the eyes that met his in the closet. Later, he learned the men were caught blocks away. They had done this before: break-ins, theft, intimidation. This time, they found a child. His parents hugged him tighter than they ever had when they came home, fear and pride clashing on their faces. They praised him for hiding, for calling, for being brave. But Ethan didn't feel brave. He felt hollow, haunted by the moment their eyes met, by the image of what might have happened if the police hadn't come fast enough. And afterward, he couldn't hear a knock without freezing, couldn't hear footsteps on the stairs without his chest seizing. At night, lying in bed, the creak of the house made him sit up, heart racing, ears straining. Because when you're alone, a knock is never just a knock. It's a question, a test, an invitation, and sometimes it's a warning. And now, as you sit in your own quiet room, ask yourself, if someone knocked at your door right now, firm and heavy, would you answer? Or would you hide, praying the sound doesn't spread to the back door, praying the lock holds against boots you can already hear? Night can turn a familiar home into a labyrinth of shadows, every corner sharper, every silence heavier. For some, it is a comfort. For others, it becomes a waiting room for terror. Mara was 16 the night she learned the difference. Her parents had gone to a late gathering, leaving her with popcorn and the glow of the television. The house seemed bigger without them, every tick of the clock punctuating the stillness. She lay curled under a blanket on the couch when the first sound came. Not a knock, not a bang. It was laughter, soft, muffled, from outside the front door. Two voices, hushed but unmistakable, as though the men standing there didn't care if anyone heard. Mara's blood chilled. She muted the TV, heart pounding. Through the curtains, she could see shapes, tall, hunched, moving too close to the door. Her phone was on the armrest. She reached for it slowly, careful not to disturb the silence. But before she could even unlock it, the laughter stopped. The knock replaced it, heavy, firm, the sound of someone who knew she was inside. She didn't move, didn't answer. Her mother had always said, never open the door to strangers. But then came the whisper, pressed low through the wood. "We saw you." Mara's breath caught in her throat. The front doorknob rattled violently, and she scrambled backward into the hall, clutching her phone. Her legs carried her upstairs before she had time to think. She ducked into her parents' bedroom, slipped into the closet, and shut the door. The coats brushed her face as she curled in tight, whispering into the phone, "Please, please send help." The operator's calm voice was an anchor, but the chaos below was louder. Wood splintered. A crash rang out. The back door this time. Footsteps spilled into the kitchen. Drawers clattered open, voices growling instructions. "Check upstairs." The words froze her blood. The floorboards groaned beneath heavy steps climbing closer. Each one stretched into forever, echoing through the house. Mara pressed deeper into the coats, the fabric scratching her cheeks, her knees aching against the floor. She whispered into the phone, "They're coming up. Please hurry." The closet door had no lock, only a thin piece of wood between her and the stranger's breath. The bedroom door swung open with a long creak. Boots scuffed across the floor. She could hear him rifling through drawers, cursing under his breath, and then closer. The handle to the closet turned. Light bled in as the door cracked. Her eyes met his. A man in a hoodie, his features shadowed, his mouth twisted into a sneer. He blinked, startled for a moment at the sight of her curled inside. Then his voice boomed across the room. "She's here!" Mara couldn't move, couldn't speak. The man jerked back, footsteps pounding as he bolted from the room, his partner thundering after him. The slam of the front door reverberated through the walls. The operator's voice filled the void. "Stay where you are. Officers are almost there." Minutes later, the red-blue glow of sirens painted the walls. Police voices called out, steady and commanding. Mara stumbled from the closet, her body trembling, her cheeks streaked with tears. The officers scoured the house. The drawers were torn open, the back door fractured, but nothing taken, nothing but her sense of safety. They told her the men had been seen before, drifting from house to house, testing doors, waiting for opportunity. Her parents returned to a home crawling with officers, their faces pale, their voices tight with anger and fear. Her mother clutched her like she was a child again, whispering apologies that couldn't erase the memory. Mara didn't sleep for weeks. Every laugh outside the window, every creak of the floor felt like a whisper from the closet door. She learned that home was not always safe, that walls were only as strong as the people behind them. And tonight, as you sit in your own stillness, ask yourself, if you heard laughter outside your door right now, soft and strange, would you dare to listen closer? Or would you bury yourself deeper in the dark, hoping the laughter wasn't meant for you? Some houses hold silence like a secret, pressing it into every room until the air itself feels heavy. Chris had lived in one like that, a small, worn rental on the outskirts of town. To most people, it was forgettable, but to Chris, it was a sanctuary. Or so he thought. That night, he was exhausted. His warehouse shift had drained him, left his muscles weak and his mind fogged. He stumbled through the door, kicked off his shoes, and collapsed onto the couch without dinner. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound that followed him into sleep. He didn't know how long he was out when the noise woke him. At first, it was faint, a scrape, a shuffle, as though something had been dragged across the floor downstairs. His eyes opened to darkness, his heart already accelerating. He listened, holding his breath, telling himself it was the wind. But then came the footsteps, not one or two, several, heavy, purposeful, pressing into the boards below. Chris sat up slowly, straining to listen. His phone was dead on the nightstand. No lifeline, no distraction. He felt the house breathe under the weight of someone moving where no one should be. The steps drew closer, a steady climb toward the stairs. Chris's body surged with panic. He had no weapon, no strength left to fight. The attic, it was his only choice. He rushed into the closet, pushed aside boxes, and shoved open the small panel in the ceiling. Dust rained onto his shoulders as he pulled himself up, closing the square of wood behind him. The attic was suffocating, hot, dense, filled with insulation that clung to his skin. He crouched low, body pressed into the shadows, his breath shallow enough to burn. He told himself to be still, to be silent, to wait. The bedroom door opened below. Light spilled upward through the cracks. He heard the intruder's boots scrape against the floor. Drawers opened. Papers rustled. The man's voice broke the silence. "Where are you?" Chris's chest tightened. Those words weren't for valuables. They were for him. The closet door banged open, hangers clattered. The man's breath rose closer, heavy, uneven, carrying the bitter smell of smoke. A hand brushed the ceiling so close the panel quivered. Dust trickled between the boards, and Chris flinched, praying the sound hadn't betrayed him. Minutes passed like hours. The man paced the room, then sat down on the bed. Springs groaned. Chris imagined him looking up, waiting, smiling in the dark. Finally, footsteps retreated, down the hall, down the stairs. Silence returned, but Chris didn't trust it. Then the front door slammed. Chris pushed the panel open an inch. The room lay in ruin, drawers overturned, shadows unmoving. He lowered himself carefully, knees shaking, and gripped his dead phone with trembling hands. When the police arrived, called from a neighbor who heard the door slam, they found the back door forced, the house torn apart, but nothing taken. Nothing except Chris's certainty. They told him it was a burglar. But burglars don't call out. Burglars don't sit on your bed. Burglars don't whisper, "Where are you?" as if they already know. Chris moved out weeks later, but the attic stayed with him. At night, when sleep threatened, he'd hear the shift of weight above him, the scrape of boots on beams, waiting, always waiting. And now, as you lie in your own room, glance upward. Do you trust the silence pressing against your ceiling? Or do you wonder, just for a moment, if someone has already pulled themselves into the dark space above, listening, waiting for you to move? The sea air always carried a promise, salt, freedom, and the soft whisper of tides smoothing away the day. For Elena, it had been a comfort. Her college years in the small beach town blurred together with late shifts at the bar, the walk home under streetlights, the open window that let in the sound of waves. She loved that window, the breeze, the smell of brine, the illusion of safety. But illusions break easily. It was past 3 a.m. when she stumbled into her room, too tired to even shower, her body aching from the endless shift. Her roommates were already asleep upstairs, their rooms locked and silent. She shut the front door, slid the bolt, and padded straight to bed. She cracked the window open just a little, the ritual she always trusted. Cool air slid across her skin. She exhaled and let exhaustion claim her. The scratching pulled her back. At first, it was so faint it barely separated itself from the sound of waves. A thin, high scrape, irregular, like a nail dragged against metal. She opened her eyes, groggy, confused. It came again, longer this time, purposeful. Her stomach tightened. The street lamp outside cast its pale glow through the blinds, thin enough to outline the shape pressed against her window. A shadow hunched low, the glint of steel in his hand. He wasn't knocking, he was cutting. Her blood went cold. The mesh screen tore slowly, strands whining as they snapped. She could hear his breathing, steady, controlled. He knew what he was doing. The slice widened and his hand slipped inside, pulling the mesh away with the patience of a predator. He gripped the sill, preparing to lift himself in. Elena froze. Her phone lay across the room. Her door was behind her. Her body screamed to run, but instinct anchored her. She only had one chance. When his weight shifted forward, when his shoulders squeezed against the frame, she lunged. She kicked hard, both feet slamming into his chest. The sound he made wasn't human at first. A guttural grunt, shocked, furious. He fell backward, body colliding with the bike rack below. The crash loud enough to split the night. Metal shrieked. Elena slammed the window shut. Her hands twisted the lock until it clicked. Her breathing came in sharp bursts, her heart threatening to tear itself out. She grabbed her phone and whispered into it, voice trembling. "Someone tried to get in. Please, he had a knife. He's still out there." The operator's voice soothed her, but her eyes stayed on the glass. The rack below was bent, but empty. The shadow was gone, not staggering down the street, not crawling away, gone. Her blood felt like ice water in her veins. Minutes stretched into forever until sirens painted the walls with red and blue. Police voices filled the silence, steady, commanding. They found the shredded screen, the blade marks carved into it. They found him too, crouched in bushes only a few streets away. In his bag, a box cutter, duct tape, zip ties, tools for binding, for silence. The officers told her she was lucky, that her quick thinking had saved her from something unspeakable. But luck didn't erase the image. Luck didn't erase the shadow at her window, the certainty in his movements. He hadn't been there to steal. He had been there for her. Her roommates fixed the screen the next day, replacing it with stronger mesh. They bolted the windows, installed alarms, tried to bury the fear beneath layers of metal and sound. But Elena never opened her window again. She couldn't. Even years later, when she lived far from the ocean, in apartments with locked glass and steel frames, she still woke at night. The scratching would return in dreams, thin, sharp, insistent. She would wake, heart racing, certain she'd see a shadow hunched at her window. And tonight, as you lie listening, think of the sound at your own window, not the wind, not the branches, the steady scrape of metal against mesh. Do you trust the dark glass separating you from the night? Do you trust the silence beyond it? Or will you wake to find that something has already been cutting through, patient, waiting for the moment you drifted deepest into sleep? Daytime never guarantees safety. That's what Liam learned, though he'd been sure the sun would protect him. It was late morning, bright enough to sting his eyes as he flipped through TV channels, slouched into the couch cushions. His parents had left for work at dawn, and he enjoyed the quiet. 12 years old, alone, master of the house. The knock arrived without warning. It wasn't polite, not curious. It was hard, steady, a sound that made the glass of the front door quiver in its frame. He froze, the remote slipping into his lap. He turned the TV down to silence, straining his ears. Through the curtain, he saw them. 2 men, one tall, with a beard and a jacket too heavy for the season. The other shorter, lean, a hood pulled low. They weren't neighbors. Their eyes shifted constantly, scanning the street, the windows, predators checking for prey. Liam ducked away from the window. His mother's warning echoed in his head. Don't answer if you don't know them. He forced his breath quiet, waiting. The knocking stopped. Relief rushed in. Too soon. From the kitchen came the rustle, the sound of boots over grass. Then, bang. The back door groaned under a heavy kick. Another, louder, more desperate. His heart punched against his ribs. He grabbed his phone and ran for the stairs, each step too loud, too clumsy. His hands shook as he whispered to the dispatcher, 2 men. They're trying to break in. Please, hurry. Stay calm, the operator soothed. Where are you? Hiding, closet, upstairs, please. Her voice stayed even, but the house below erupted. The back door cracked, wood splintered. Boots stomped across the tile, drawers banged open, voices rough and careless. Check the living room. Grab it quick. The words weren't for him, but they rang in his skull like a curse. He curled deeper into the closet, pressed between coats and boxes, his knees trembling. The air inside was hot, stifling, every breath a risk. The stairs groaned. His throat closed. They were coming up. The bedroom door creaked open. Footsteps dragged across the carpet. Drawers slid, clothes tossed. Then closer, closer. The closet handle twitched, turned. Light split the dark, spilling across his face. The man in the hoodie stared at him. Their eyes met. For a moment, everything stopped. The man's breath, Liam's pulse, the world itself. Then the man shouted, voice sharp with panic, "He's here!" Boots thundered. Both men bolted, crashing down the stairs, the front door slamming hard enough to shake the walls. "They saw me," Liam whispered, voice breaking. "Stay where you are," the operator said. "Police are nearly there." Moments later, sirens wailed. Officers swept the house, their voices echoing through the halls. They found Liam trembling in the closet, face pale, phone clutched like a lifeline. The back door hung broken, drawers overturned, but nothing stolen. The men had fled too fast. Later, Liam learned they were caught. Repeat offenders, opportunists, men who thought his home was empty. They hadn't expected a child. His parents returned, their relief sharp enough to hurt. They praised him for hiding, for calling, but he didn't feel brave. He felt hollow, scarred by the image of the man's eyes, the way he'd looked at him in that moment before running. Weeks passed before Liam could sleep without jolting awake at every knock, every creak. Even now, years later, the sound of a firm knock still made his stomach drop. Because once you've seen strangers at your door, once you've heard them mutter in your kitchen, you never really forget. And as you sit in your own quiet space now, imagine the knock. Imagine the shuffle of feet at your back door, the thud of boots testing your locks. Would you answer? Or would you hold your breath, praying they don't decide that your house, your door, is too easy to resist? Nights alone always felt stretched, as if time itself slowed down just to test your nerves. For Jenna, the test came on an ordinary Tuesday. Her parents were late coming home, stuck in traffic after a dinner across town. She had been left with homework, a reheated meal, and the responsibility of keeping the house safe until their return. 14 years old, old enough to stay alone, though the way the silence filled each hallway made her doubt it. At first, she welcomed the quiet. She sprawled on the couch, textbooks open but ignored, the glow of her phone her only companion. Midnight edged closer, and the house began to feel less like hers, more like something watching her. That was when she heard the rattle, the faint metallic scrape of the front doorknob twisting. Once, twice, slow, deliberate. Her heart stuttered. She froze, staring at the door from across the room. The knob stopped. Silence thickened. Then, tap, tap, gentle knocks, almost playful. She slipped behind the couch, her breath shallow, her phone clenched in her hands. The knocks grew louder, then pounding. The door shuddered in its frame, each strike sharper, more insistent. And then a voice, low, almost sing-song. "I know you're in there, just open up." Her fingers shook as she dialed. 911, someone's at my door trying to get in. The operator's calm voice urged her to stay hidden, to stay quiet, to give her address. Jenna whispered everything, clutching the phone so tightly her nails dug into her palms. The pounding stopped. Her relief was short-lived. From the kitchen came the sound of glass rattling, then a dull thud. Someone was at the back now. Boots shuffled against the deck. Another thud, louder, the wood straining. She crawled toward the stairs, moving as quietly as she could, each creak of the boards beneath her amplified in her ears. Halfway up, the crash came, glass shattered, raining down on the tile. A voice called out, stronger now, echoing through the house. "Hello?" Jenna's legs carried her faster. She scrambled into her room, slipped into the closet, and shut the door, pressing herself into the shadows. The coats muffled her trembling breath. Downstairs, boots scraped glass. Heavy steps crossed the kitchen. Drawers opened. Objects clattered to the floor. "Where are you?" the voice called, the sing-song tone now sharpened to something darker. Her body locked tight. She whispered into the phone, "He's inside, please hurry." The steps moved toward the stairs, upward, each one a drumbeat in her skull. The bedroom door groaned. Hinges squealed. His footsteps were heavy, deliberate. The closet door handle twitched. Jenna clenched her jaw to keep from screaming. The knob turned. Light pierced the shadows as the door cracked open. A face appeared, hood pulled low, features obscured. He froze when his eyes met hers, just long enough for her blood to freeze. Then his lips curled into a grin. "Found you!" She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. But then, in the distance, sirens, wailing, growing louder. The man's grin vanished. His footsteps thundered as he bolted from the room, crashing down the stairs, slamming the door behind him. The operator's voice steadied her. "Stay put. Officers are almost there." Moments later, police voices filled the house, flashlights cutting through the wreckage of shattered glass and overturned drawers. They found her trembling in the closet, phone still pressed to her ear, eyes wide with terror. Her parents rushed home minutes later, their faces pale, their arms clinging to her as if they could shield her from the memory. The police explained the intruder had fled into the woods, that he had been watching houses for weeks, but the image of that grin never left her. Even years later, Jenna couldn't look at a closet door without imagining it slowly opening, light spilling in, a shadowed face whispering, "Found you." And tonight, as you sit in your own darkness, picture the door nearest you, thin wood, a simple handle. Would you hear it turn in time, or would the face already be there, grinning in the crack of the light? It was supposed to be a safe afternoon, the kind of day where the sun makes shadows seem harmless. But safety is a fragile illusion, and Alex discovered just how easily it shatters. He had just come home from school, dropped his bag by the door, and settled into the living room with a bowl of cereal. His parents wouldn't be home for hours. The house was his kingdom for now, quiet, still, predictable. Until the first knock. It wasn't frantic, but it wasn't polite either. A steady, deliberate rhythm that reverberated through the frame. Alex stiffened, spoon frozen midair. He waited, listening. Another knock, then another. Through the side window by the door, he peeked carefully. Two men stood outside, one tall with a beard that shadowed his face, the other younger, lean with a hood pulled low over his brow. Neither smiled, neither looked patient. They weren't selling anything. They weren't lost. Their eyes scanned the street, the windows, the yard, predators deciding if they'd been spotted. Alex ducked back, his chest tight. His mom's voice echoed in his head. "Don't answer, don't move." The knocking stopped. For a moment, silence returned. He dared to believe they'd left. Then came the rustling, boots against grass. A shadow slid past the window. A thud struck the back door, then another, harder. The wood rattled in its frame. Panic seized him. He grabbed his phone from the counter, fingers fumbling as he dialed. 911, please. 2 men are trying to get in. His whisper shook with fear. The operator's voice was steady. Stay calm. Where are you right now? Hiding. Upstairs closet. Please hurry. He darted up the stairs, socks slipping on the polished wood. He shoved himself into his parents' closet, buried in the coats, knees tucked to his chest. His breath came shallow, loud in his ears. Downstairs, the sound worsened. Splintering wood, the crash of drawers, voices barking instructions. Check the living room. Grab what you can. Fast! Alex clenched the phone tighter, heart hammering so hard it hurt. The stairs groaned. Terror pinned him. Each step was deliberate, heavier, closer. The bedroom door swung open, drawers yanked, papers shuffled. Then silence. The closet handle twitched. Alex squeezed his eyes shut, praying. The door cracked open. The younger man's face appeared, hood shadowing his eyes. For a heartbeat, they stared at each other. Alex's whisper slipped out without permission. Please. The man froze, then snapped his head toward the hall. He's here. Footsteps thundered. Both men bolted down the stairs, the slam of the front door rattling the walls. They saw me, Alex whispered into the phone. You're safe, the operator soothed. Stay hidden. Police are almost there. Moments later, sirens swelled, blue and red lights flickering through the curtains. Officers stormed the house, voices sharp, sure. They found Alex trembling in the closet, pale and shaking, phone still clutched in his hand. The back door hung broken, drawers overturned, nothing taken, nothing but his sense of safety. The intruders were caught blocks away, repeat offenders, opportunists who thought the house was empty. But Alex knew better. He'd seen the way the younger man stared at him just long enough before running. His parents hugged him tighter than ever when they returned, pride and fear mingling in their eyes. They praised him for calling, for hiding, for surviving. But Alex couldn't forget that face, couldn't forget the moment the door cracked, the way the man had looked at him. Not like a thief, like a hunter. Even years later, every knock still froze him. Every creak of the stairs still felt like footsteps. Because once you've seen strangers at your door, once you've heard their boots testing your locks, you never truly believe the house is yours again. And tonight, as you sit in your own silence, ask yourself, if you heard the closet door handle twitch right now, would you believe it was only your imagination? Or would you brace yourself, knowing eyes might already be staring through the crack, waiting to whisper, "Found you"? The sound that woke Clara was not loud. It was small, careful, like a secret trying not to be discovered. A scrape, a faint shift of weight on the wooden porch outside her window. She rolled onto her side, half dreaming, expecting the usual safety of her family's country house. But the silence pressed wrong. The night wasn't filled with the usual chorus of crickets. It was as if the world itself held its breath. Then came the knock. Not on the front door, on her bedroom window. 3 sharp taps, precise, deliberate. Her breath caught in her throat. She lay frozen, staring at the thin curtain that separated her from the night. Her phone sat on the nightstand, screen dark, and her hand trembled as she reached for it. Before she could dial, a voice seeped through the glass, low, gravelly, too calm. I saw your light. Her blood turned to ice. She had turned it off. She was sure she had. She backed away from the window, clutching the phone like a weapon. She dialed with shaking fingers, whispering to the dispatcher, "Someone's outside, at my window. Please send help." The operator's voice was calm, steady, telling her to stay hidden, to stay quiet. But the voice outside cut through. "Open up, I won't hurt you, just let me in." The curtain shifted just slightly, as if a hand brushed against it. She could see the shadow behind it, hunched, waiting. Then the scrape of the window lock twisting. Clara bolted. She sprinted down the hall into her parents' empty room and shoved herself into the closet, phone pressed to her ear, knees shaking. The sound of the window sliding open echoed faintly, glass against frame. Footsteps padded across her carpet, too heavy, too slow. The man was inside. "Where are you?" he called, his voice turning sharp, eager. Her whisper to the dispatcher cracked. "He's in the house. Please hurry." The floorboards creaked as he prowled the hallway. A drawer opened. A door slammed. The house moaned under his movements. And then, closer, boots in her parents' room. The closet door handle jiggled. Clara clamped a hand over her mouth. The knob twisted. The door cracked an inch. She could see his gloved fingers curl around the edge. His breath hissed through the gap, hot, steady. Then the distant wail of sirens sliced through the air. The man froze. He muttered a curse, then bolted. She heard his boots pound down the hall, down the stairs, the slam of the front door vibrating through the walls. Moments later, flashlights cut through the dark. Police voices called out, filling the silence. They found her curled in the closet, pale and trembling, her phone still pressed to her ear. The house bore the marks of his presence. The open window, the faint smear of a handprint on the curtain. But he was gone, swallowed by the night. Her parents rushed home minutes later, horror etched into their faces. They hugged her fiercely, checked every lock, every window. But Clara knew locks could be broken, windows could be opened. Voices could slip through glass like whispers. She stopped sleeping near windows after that. She stopped trusting curtains to keep out the dark. Because sometimes the voice doesn't leave. Sometimes, in the stillness of night, she swears she hears it again, low, gravelly, calm. "I saw your light." And tonight, as you sit in your own quiet room, think of the nearest window, thin glass, a simple lock. Would you hear the taps before the voice followed? Or would you wake already knowing someone was inside, whispering through the dark that they had been watching you all along? Some houses don't echo with footsteps, they swallow them. That was the first thing Daniel noticed the night the silence felt too heavy to ignore. He had just finished a long shift at the warehouse, his muscles stiff, his thoughts hazy with fatigue. He barely remembered locking the front door before stumbling into bed. The rental was old, wooden beams, crooked floors, but it was cheap, and he lived alone. To him, that loneliness was freedom. Until the freedom cracked. A noise threaded its way into his dream, faint at first, almost absorbed by the thick dark. A dull thump from downstairs. His eyes snapped open. The streetlight outside threw weak lines across the curtains, leaving the corners of the room black and unreadable. He lay still, ears straining. Then came the footsteps, heavy, unmistakable, crossing the living room floor below. Slow at first, then quicker, like someone searching. Daniel's throat tightened. He groped for his phone on the nightstand. The screen flickered. 4% battery, no missed calls, no texts, no lifeline. The sound shifted. A drawer opened in the kitchen, banged shut with force. Someone was in his house. He swallowed, cold sweat sliding down his spine. He whispered to himself, "Maybe Jason, maybe Jason." His friend had a spare key, but Jason always texted first, always. The steps moved toward the stairs. Panic lit his body on fire. He couldn't fight. He couldn't run. The closet, there was the attic panel, his only chance. He crept across the floor, teeth clenched against the groan of the boards. He slid open the closet door, climbed onto the boxes, and pushed the panel upward. The wood grated, dust falling into his hair, but he managed to pull himself inside. The attic air was thick, stale with insulation and wood rot. He crouched low, forcing the panel closed behind him. His chest heaved, but he forced his breaths shallow. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs. The bedroom door opened. Light flared, seeping upward through the cracks. Shadows stretched across the ceiling beams. He heard him, moving, breathing. The man rifled through drawers, muttering low curses, then closer. The closet door banged open. Clothes rattled. A hand brushed the ceiling, so close Daniel could feel it through the thin panel. His pulse pounded in his ears. Dust shifted under his trembling weight. Then the voice, rough, direct, too calm. "Come out! I know you're here!" Daniel clamped a hand over his mouth. The man lingered below, his breathing ragged. Then suddenly the bed springs creaked. He had sat down, waiting, listening. Minutes dragged into centuries. Daniel's legs ached, but he didn't dare move. Finally, the voice again. "Fine, I'll check the rest." The boots stomped toward the door, down the hall, down the stairs. Silence. Daniel counted in his head. 1, 2, 3 minutes. He slid the panel open a sliver. The room lay wrecked, drawers yanked, clothes spilled, empty. Then the slam of the front door echoed up the stairs. His body nearly gave out with relief. He climbed down carefully, his knees shaking. He clutched his phone, whispering into it, "Please, please, someone." When the police finally arrived, called by neighbors who'd heard the slam, they found the back door pried open. No valuables missing, no obvious reason for the break-in. But Daniel knew this wasn't a burglar. Burglars don't sit on your bed. Burglars don't call into the shadows, "Come out." That night changed him. He moved, but never slept the same again. To this day, when he closes his eyes in a silent room, he swears he can still hear it, the creak of the bed under someone else's weight. A patient intruder waiting for him to crawl out of the attic. And tonight, as you lie listening, do you trust the silence above your ceiling? Do you trust that your attic is empty? Or will you wake to the sound of breathing above you? A voice whispering through the panel, "I know you're here." The beach house was supposed to be temporary. Cheap rent split between 3 roommates while they finished school. For Melissa, it felt like a kind of freedom. The walls were thin, the floors uneven, but the sea was just beyond the parking lot, and she loved falling asleep to the rhythm of the waves. That night, her roommates had gone to bed early. Their rooms upstairs were silent, curtains drawn, lights out. Melissa trudged home after a long bartending shift, feet sore, head heavy. She locked the front door, peeled off her uniform, and collapsed onto her ground floor bed. She cracked the window, just like always. The night air carried the smell of salt and seaweed. She drifted almost immediately, sinking deep. The scratching woke her. At first it was faint, easy to mistake for branches, but there were no trees outside her window. The sound came again, sharp, irregular, metal on mesh. Her eyes opened, her stomach dropped. The street lamp outside carved a weak glow through the blinds. Against it, a figure hunched at her window, head low beneath a hood. One gloved hand clutched a tool, slicing neat lines through the screen. Her body froze, breath caught in her throat. The man peeled back the mesh with deliberate patience. Then he slid his fingers inside, feeling for the lock. Melissa's mind raced. Her phone was on the nightstand, inches away, but to grab it meant leaning toward him. Her door was behind her, but the boards would groan. She had seconds. As his shoulders lifted, bracing to climb through, her body decided for her. She threw herself forward, feet slamming into his chest with every ounce of strength she had. The grunt that tore from him was guttural, furious. He fell backward, slamming into the bike rack with a metallic crash. The sound rang sharp into the night. Melissa lunged, slammed the window shut, twisted the lock until it bit her skin. She grabbed her phone, voice trembling as she whispered, "Please, 911, someone tried to climb in." The operator's calm voice steadied her, but her eyes stayed glued to the window. The bike rack bent awkwardly, but the shadow was gone. Not limping away, not staggering, just gone. Her pulse hammered. The minutes stretched forever. Sirens finally bled into the silence, painting her walls red and blue. Officers swept the yard, flashlights cutting across the sand and scrub. They found him 2 blocks away, crouched in bushes. In his bag, a box cutter, duct tape, zip ties. Not a burglar's kit, a hunter's. Melissa's stomach heaved when they told her. "You're lucky," one officer said, his voice steady but his eyes sharp. "You reacted fast, but you shouldn't keep your window open at night. Not around here." She nodded, though anger flickered beneath the fear. Why should it be her fault for wanting air? But she didn't argue. The next day, her roommates patched the screen, reinforced the lock, chipped in for a basic alarm system. It gave them all something to cling to. But Melissa didn't open her window again. Even after moving, even years later, she still woke sometimes at 3 a.m., heart pounding, certain she'd hear the scratch of metal against mesh. She'd lie there staring at the window, waiting for the shadow to appear, for the patient figure with the box cutter to try again. Because the truth was, he hadn't come to steal. He had come for her. And tonight, as you sit in your own bed, think about the thin fabric stretched over your window. One blade, one hand, one patient figure in the dark, and the only thing standing between you and him is the moment you wake up. Sometimes the worst horrors arrive when the world insists you're safe. Bright mornings, familiar routines, the illusion that danger belongs only to the dark. Ethan was 12 when that illusion cracked. It was a weekday, school closed for reasons he couldn't even remember, and the house was his alone. He sprawled on the couch, cartoons flickering, a bowl of cereal on his lap. His parents were at work. The neighborhood was quiet. The knock at the front door startled him. Not a polite knock, not a neighborly one. It was sharp, heavy, the kind that rattled the frame. He froze, spoon halfway to his mouth. Through the thin curtain, he peeked. 2 men, one tall with a dark jacket, beard shadowing his face, the other shorter, a hood drawn low. They shifted uneasily, scanning the street. They didn't look like they belonged. Ethan pulled back from the window. His mom's warning echoed, "Don't answer, don't move." The knocking stopped. He almost exhaled. Then he heard it, rustling from the backyard. He crept to the kitchen. The men were there now, boots pressing into the grass. The tall one raised his foot and slammed it into the back door. Wood groaned. Another kick. The glass rattled. Ethan's stomach dropped. He grabbed his phone, fingers fumbling, and ran for the stairs. 911, he whispered when the operator answered. 2 men, they're trying to break in. Stay calm. The dispatcher's voice was smooth, steady. Where are you? Hiding, closet, upstairs. Please hurry. The back door cracked and splintered. Boots stomped across tile. Drawers banged open. Voices echoed, rough and impatient. Check the living room. Grab it quick. He pressed deeper into the closet buried beneath coats. His chest heaved. The air grew hot, suffocating. The stairs groaned. Each step was a hammer. The bedroom door creaked open. Drawers yanked. Papers shuffled. Silence stretched. Then the closet handle twitched. Ethan clutched the phone until his knuckles burned. The door cracked open. The man in the hoodie stared back at him, eyes narrowing. For a breath, neither moved. Then the man snapped his head toward the hall. He's here, Boots thundered. Both bolted down the stairs, the slam of the front door shaking the walls. They saw me, Ethan whispered. You're safe, the dispatcher soothed. Stay hidden. Officers are almost there. Sirens swelled, growing louder. Blue and red flashed through the curtains. Police voices filled the house. They found him in the closet, pale, trembling, phone still pressed to his ear. The back door was wrecked, drawers overturned, but nothing stolen. The men had fled too fast. They were caught blocks away, repeat offenders with records of burglary and worse. But Ethan didn't feel lucky. He felt hollow, haunted by the man's eyes, the way he had looked at him before fleeing. That look wasn't about stealing. It was about finding. Even years later, Ethan couldn't hear a knock without flinching, couldn't listen to footsteps on stairs without feeling that closet door twitch again. And tonight, as you sit in your own silence, ask yourself, if someone knocked at your door right now, heavy and deliberate, would you answer? Or would you press yourself into the dark, praying the sound never moves to the back door, praying the lock holds against boots already testing it?